So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Thursday, May 2nd edition of Keystroke Live with Michael Gebb.
Taste up here.
It is Keystroke Live. I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody, and then we can have questions at the end. Nick and I will be monitoring the chat if something comes up. So let's see if I can get this done. All right, I think I've got everyone muted but Michael, and just remember, this is every Thursday at 9 a.m. And without further ado, I will hand it over to Mike.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. It is Thursday morning, 8 o'clock Pacific time, bright and early, earlier than I usually get up, but here we are. This is a continuation of last week's seminar that Jay and Nick gave. I think I listened in on it. I think they both did an excellent job. You guys talked to Nick. You'll need to encourage him to do more of them. Maybe he'll do one on his own even. Today we're going to continue in with the Toolbar editor, and actually we're going to talk about the macros, which is the power behind all the Toolbar buttons, or what we call the touchscreen editor, or the keyboard macros, or the keyboard toolbar, or the macro toolbar. It's had a lot of different names, and the reason for all the different names is they all interact and work together. So the toolbars are, of course, designed to be used with the touch screen, but they also, of course, work with a mouse, and the power behind them is that they enact macros. The macros can be anything from a very simple series of key presses using the send keys command, which would be very similar to using a programmable keyboard, all the way to almost programming language in some cases, specialty commands and so forth. But one of the things I did want to highlight is at the beginning here, in the Sales Manager, if you go to Transaction, Parameters, and then Macros, this particular machine doesn't have any macros at all, so instead of, I was going to say it's going to pop up a list of macros, the list was empty, so it just jumped right into the first macro. So you can have simple macros here. You can type them in, macros, say just to enter customer. And the description you don't have to fill out. That's just for your own use, so when you come back a year from now and try to look at this, you can remind yourself of what it's for. The hotkey is what you would press to run this macro. I'll just put a D in here, and remove the shift. And then we get down to this bottom box, and this is where you actually enter the macro. Of course, memorizing all the different macros and how they work is difficult. When you work on it for a while, you actually do end up memorizing some of them. The easiest thing to do is the lookup key, which would be F2, and here we have a list of all the different macro commands. Some of these, the command you see right there is what it is. Others, this is just the beginning of the command, and it'll step through it and help you build out the command. So we can go sales entry command, customer entry, and we are looking at version 7.15 here of Keystroke. In version 7.15, we have a new customer entry screen. There's a full screen and a simplified screen. I'll go ahead and just do the simplified one so we have a chance to look at that. Okay, and that's it. I've created a macro that when I hit Control-D, it's going to enter a customer. Now, the name enter customer doesn't really mean much. It just tells me what it does. The real command, what's really happening, is down here. Hit OK to save that. And now I can see my list of macros, which just has the one. Hit F10 to save all that. So out here, whenever I'm doing something, I can be in the middle of sale, doing whatever I want. I can hit Control-D, and it pops me into our new simplified customer entry screen. So that's the way you would enter a keyboard macro. Now, one of the reasons I bring this up is some people say, well, we're not here talking about keyboards. We're talking about touchscreens and toolbars and everything like that. We're joining the modern age. Well, some people still use keyboards, and also this macro list can be referenced by the buttons themselves. And in fact, if you want to have a command like this, like go into the simple Enter Customer screen, and you want to have both a button that does it and you want to have the ability to do it from the keyboard, then where you'd want to start is with the keyboard macro, as I've done here. So I've created the macro. It works by hitting Control-D. I can now go over to my button editor and just decide that I never ever use this Edit Invoice button, so I'm just going to rename it to Enter Customer. So I'm going to right-click on it, and I can, of course, go Edit Button. Okay, and we pop in here and we have all the different button stuff. This is what comes up first is what we call our simplified button editor. If you click on Advanced, you'll get the advanced features, which is more about the background images and the style and alignment and a whole bunch of stuff you can change in there. But here's the current macro that's assigned to this Edit Invoice button. So when I click on Edit Invoice here, what it does is it tells the system to run this macro. It takes this text that we see here in the macro box and it sends it into our macro engine. And the macro engine does whatever it needs to do based on what we see here. So here we have, it's going to run a menu command, transaction, edit, print, sales invoice, date. So it's going to pop me into an edit invoice list, a list of current invoices. I want to change that. I don't want to do that anymore. So I'm going to highlight all this, Shift End. Is the quickest way to do that, and delete, and just wipe that out. And then I'm going to enter the new macro. Again, I could just type it in, or I can hit F2 or Insert to look it up, or I can click on the binoculars, which means go out and find something. And again, it pops up a list of all the different macro functions that are available to me. In this case, instead of typing in sales entry command and all that again, I'm instead going to select Run Macro. And it gives me a list of all the available macros on this local machine, and for some reason I'm getting nothing. So we'll just cancel that. I'm not sure what happened on that. I'll just type it in. You can, I'll just go run macro equals enter. I'm actually going to go customer. This isn't going to work at first. You're better off when you name things and do stuff like this is not to use spaces in between. It allows the engine that interprets your commands gives it a much easier time of figuring things out. So I'll just leave that as that, and I'm going to save. I've changed the name. Oh yeah, I changed the name so you know we're not editing an invoice. So just come up here. And enter customer. So save all this. You see the button changes here. If I click on it now, nothing happens. So let's check and see why. We go to the parameters, macros, and we can see the reason is because there is a space here. I'm going to remove that space just to make things work better. And now when I click on Enter Customer, oh, let's get out of here. It pops up, okay? So this is just a quick and easy example of setting a toolbar button to run a macro that's set up in the system. And And why would you do that? Well, again, so that you can have a hotkey on a button. You can't assign a hotkey to a button itself, so you create the macro that that button is supposed to do, assign a hotkey to the macro, and then to tell the button to run that macro. The net result is the same. The other reason you may want to do it is if you are doing pop-up toolbars, as we saw last week from Jay, you may want to have a button on several of those toolbars that is the same button over and over and over again, and it may be a fairly long macro or difficult macro, so it may be easier to type onto that button and run macro equals the name of that macro. And that way all the buttons share the same macro, and if you ever need to make an adjustment to it, you can make it just in the one spot. You can make your adjustment here under transaction parameters macro, change it in this one location, and then it will change what all the other buttons do at that time. Okay, let's go out of here and go kind of back into more of what we were looking at last week, which is actually the touchscreen editor. I'm going to right-click on my button that I just programmed. And go Edit Toolbars. And one other thing I wanted to point out from last week's is when you click here inside our touchscreen editor, the first time you click, we're highlighting the whole toolbar. You'll see the blue box around the toolbar. You'll see the toolbar highlighted name over here, and you'll see down here it's toolbar, payments, and this is information about the toolbar. If we click again, it will highlight the button, and it will switch the bottoms down here from editing the toolbar to editing the button. We also get the red box around the current button, and over here under buttons, the button that we've clicked is highlighted. And we can work in this area over here. For those of you that want to do advanced work and know what you're doing, you can do this show XML. You can actually go right in here and make changes directly to the XML code, which is what everything else, everything else we do here just goes in and does the editing for you. But also what I wanted to point out is down here is we have the button name and the run macro command, which are the two things that you change the most. So if that's all you're going to change is the macro or the text that's on the button, you don't need to right-click on this and select Edit, or of all this stuff, the edit thing. So you don't need to click Edit button here. And you don't need to go down here to the bottom. The other way of doing that, oops, I lost my highlight, is there's the button editor down here. We can click on this and it pops into the button editor. If you're just changing the text or just changing the macro, you can actually do that right here. So if you're making a lot of changes, you can do it quicker and easier by just doing it straight from the touchscreen editor. Okay, so again, we see that our run macro here is enter customer, and it's all set and ready to go. If I want to, on these macros, most buttons and most macros are a single line. You click it, run macro, enter customer, you're done, or the customer entry, you're done. But they can be several lines long. In fact, they can have as many lines as needed. So you can do multiple things. You can have it go in and run reports and go back to the database manager and edit inventory items and go to the accounts receivable and apply a payment to a customer's account. If you did that exact same thing in the exact same way every day, you could program it all into a single button and do it from there. So you can, again, hit the Enter key and add an additional line on here. You can type it in manually, or you can press the lookup list. One of the things I want to point out is when you pop into this lookup list, this list will change slightly depending on what module you're in. So it is important if you're going to be entering, working with the touchscreen editor, setting up buttons, making changes. You, of course, can do that from anywhere in the program. However, if you're going to be doing stuff for the sales manager, you should be doing it in the sales manager. And the reason for that is certain options here are only available in the sales manager. So they will only appear on this lookup list if you are, in fact, in the sales manager. For instance, sales entry command. If I was in the database manager working on a toolbar button or in the purchase manager, the sales entry command wouldn't be there. In the purchase manager, you get a purchase entry command. The other thing I want to point out that's important on this is, I said the most common thing people use buttons for is just a series of keystrokes, but just like a programmable keyboard, and that is the send keys command. That is the most common thing to do, and a lot of people get in the habit of just using send keys all the time because that's what they're used to. So instead of creating an enter customer thing, they'll do send keys equals control F8 to go to the simplified one. Whenever you have the option of not using send keys, whenever there is a pop-up command, so for instance, if you wanted a command to bring up the say the cash calculator or the time clock, you of course can do a send keys equals F5 or send keys equals shift F4, but you're better off doing the actual command when it's available. So instead of send keys equals shift F4 to bring up the time clock, I'm much better off creating one that's pop-up equals time clock. And the reason for that is if you do send keys equals, it will work fine as long as they're in the right place in the program. For instance, if you had it created a button that's going to type in a particular product code or stock number on a line item. So I created a button here called popcorn, and I put in send keys equals 1257, which might be the stock number, and an enter. It's going to work great as long as I'm sitting on a line item, but if I happen to be in the customer entry screen and I hit popcorn, and then I'm going to get customer number 1257. So instead of doing send keys equals 1257, I'm better off under the keyboard macros, or under the macro function here, popping in here, and first, before I ever use a send keys command, search this list and see if it's there. A lot of things are going to be under pop-up, or they're going to be under something like sales entry. A line item is going to be under the sales entry command. So if I select the sales entry command, I have enter item. And it's going to pull me up, and it's going to just walk me through what field am I going to be entering by, and I could say stock number. And then the nice thing about this is you don't even have to remember the stock number. It's going to pop up your inventory list right here. You can select an item, and it puts it in, and it builds the macro for us down here. So it's sales entry command is enter item, the number equals 52. So instead of send keys 52, I do that, and the nice thing about this is it will work no matter where they are. If they're in the price field and they hit that button, it's going to enter a new item, number 52. It's not going to change the price of the current item to 52. If they're in a place where, like in the complete sales screen or in the print dialog box, or not even, for some reason, not even in the sales manager, and they click on that button, it's not going to type a 52 and do something random. It is just going to ignore the command. So either the command is going to work and do what it's supposed to do, or it's just not going to do anything. But you're not going to get some random event that does something you don't want it to do. So again, I'm going to say it again, very important when you enter in these macro commands, do your lookup list. Don't ever select send keys unless you can find until you've exhausted all the other possibilities, and then you know you can't do it any other way, so then you are going to use send keys. Send keys does work, but again, they have to start from the right location for send keys to function properly, just like you would on any programmable keyboard. There are special commands, keys that we found people use send keys for a lot. We've tried to create a macro function for something like run report. The other big one is run menu right here. Run menu is important. That's what a lot of people end up with doing send keys for, is to go up and do something off the menu. You're much better off, again, using the run menu command than send keys, as it will actually run the correct function for you instead of getting lost and possibly doing something different. So again, don't use send keys. Use run menu, run report, sales entry commands, whatever you need to do. Run menu, this point it doesn't walk you through it. It does just run menu equals. You need to go out and figure out what it is you're going to do. So oftentimes you need to go into the back into the Keystroke program. I'll just save and exit here. For this demonstration, it's easier to pop back and forth. You can actually have the toolbar editor and Keystroke continues to run. So you can put them side by side or just Alt-Tab back between them. You can hop back and forth. You don't need to close the touchscreen editor to go out and check something in the program. But the run menu command, you just type in whatever you're going to do. So if I wanted a run menu command to go in and again edit the invoice, I can go transaction, and then you just do the names, transaction-edit-sales invoice-number, and it would pop up that command. And that's what we saw before. That was the macro I replaced on here. That was a run menu command. Okay. Going back to this particular thing, I did want to mention macros. This list of macros, current macros, and these are the TRN, which is the name of the Sales Manager module. This list of macros and what they do and everything about it is stored on your hard disk, of course. It is stored in the data directory, so whatever data directory you're in determines what macros you're going to get. It is stored in the toolbars directory below the data directory, which is the same location, obviously, that the toolbars are stored. And the file name is macros.dat, or in this case, it's the Sales Manager macros, so it's macrossm.dat. So if I wanted to go out and look at this, if something wasn't working right, I could go out and edit macrossm.dat. Or if I created a whole bunch of macros here and I wanted to send them to another store, macrossm for macrosalesmanager.dat is the file I would send. So macrossm.dat is only available in the Sales Manager. There's a macrospm.dat, which is available only in the Purchase Manager. There is also a macros.dat, which is available throughout the program. We don't really have editors for everything. You can go out and they're very easy to edit by hand. You can also create macros in macrossm.dat and then just cut and paste them to the other files if you want to use them that way. But most often people use them in the Sales Manager, so this is where we have the editor. Okay, that is about it for what I had on the Sales Manager and macros and using buttons. Let me just pop in here one more time. There we go. Edit toolbars. Again, you click on the toolbar, click on the button you want to edit. You can make changes right here, or you can go into the button there if you need to. But it is important to remember you can do it right from here and use the search button, the binoculars, or the F2 insert key to pop up and do your list from there. I did want to bring up one more thing, though, before we close, and I talked about this. These macro functions, I said never use send keys unless you have to. So after you've exhausted all possibilities and the thing you want to do just isn't on there, but you think it would be nice if there was a function, either a sales entry command, is where most often these functions go, or a pop-up command, or maybe a parameter, which is these set and toggle flag buttons. If you just think, wow, it'd be nice if I had this particular macro, feel free to make suggestions, to make requests, to say, hey, it would be a lot easier to do this. I wouldn't have to use send keys if you had a function on your macros that did this, and we will be happy to look into it, and if possible, we will add it in. The list of functions we have here are just things that we've come up with as we've edited our own buttons and done our own touchscreen and done our own development. These are the functions we felt were important and we needed to have. I'm sure we've missed a lot of them, and I'm sure there's a lot of them that can be added to it, so please feel free to go in and send us a suggestion. Send it to either, that's the best thing, call support and talk to them about it, or just send an email to Mike Tabor. We can then review it and add it to this program the next time it comes out. Okay, and that is all I had for this week. I did want to remind people, the dealers out there, that we are currently have version 7.15 available on our website to use. You should all be using it. You should all be using it live. We are finally going to be releasing it soon. I don't have the exact date. Dave may know. But it is going to be, it is not weeks away, it is days away. They're supposed to be making CDs and labels and announcements and all that good stuff that goes out with it. There are a lot of really nice features in it. We're going to talk about those more in future seminars. The multi-store purchase orders we've talked about in the past, we're going to revisit that as a lot of enhancements have been done to multi-store purchase orders to make it work better for some for everybody, some for the bigger stores. The bigger stores, we've had the ability to do groupings where instead of working with all the stores at once, you can work with groups of stores. For certain situations, we're adding the ability to print individual purchase orders at the individual stores from the multi-store order. We've also added the ability that this will be applied to everybody is to save a multi-store order as a reserved order. So you can work on it and wait till you're all done with it before you hit the real save button and actually populate and generate purchase orders in other stores. We've also added a new feature in 7.15 in the latest release. Actually, the release that's on the website has this, and that is the ability to do what we call vendor catalogs, which is the ability to have multiple alternate inventory data sets available to you throughout the program. So you can take a vendor's catalog or a vendor's list of items, import that into its own inventory database, so it's not in your live data, it's in a secondary alternate database that we call a catalog, vendor catalog, and have access to it. So you'll be able to look up the item from there, copy it into your main inventory if you want to go ahead and use it. So that's going to be a very nice feature, and that's available in the current release and is being enhanced in the future release, and we will talk about that in a future webinar. And one last thing, we are going to have a training session, a mini dealer summit. I don't know if you can call it a summit. You might call it the dealer Piedmont or Knoll or something. But it's basically going to be this year's or this summer's dealer summit. It's going to be in Las Vegas the first weekend of August. It coincidentally is going to be just prior to the RSPA show and in the same location. So if you're going to that show, you can go to both very easily. If you're not going to the RSPA show, just forget that it's going to be there and just come to the Keystroke Dealer Summit the first weekend of August and leave before the RSPA show happens, and you'll never know it was there in the first place. That's at the Mandalay Bay. If you want to start making plans now, of course, the closest place to stay is the Mandalay Bay. You can also stay at the Luxor, which is where I'm going to stay. I like the Luxor better. I like the rooms are nice. It's a little less expensive. It's a little bit quieter. It is a little bit of a walk, but it's not bad, and it is inside. Between the Luxor and Mandalay Bay Convention Center, there's a shopping mall, so you're walking through a Las Vegas shopping mall and not having to go outside in the heat. So that's coming up first week of August. Make plans now. We will send out a formal and better announcement hopefully soon. Other than that, that's all I have for this week. We will continue next week with more advanced features on toolbars. Mike Tabor is going to be handling that session, so hopefully you all can make it back for then. If Dave is available or somebody on that end to unmute everybody, I can see. There we go. If anybody has any questions at this time. I hear crickets. Literally, I hear crickets.
And if you've never been a RSPA member, you can contact Mercury. They'll get you a free membership and free pass to the Retail Now trade show.
All right. Well, if there aren't any questions, I appreciate everybody coming and spending their time with me this morning. Again, we will do this again next week with Mike Tabor, and I'll be back again for the first of next month, and I may do one of the other advanced features sometime in May as well.
All right, thanks, Mike.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a good week. Go out and sell lots of programs.